Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and Torchlight Infinite Season 8 is upon us. So I put together a leveling guide here for the new character, Thea3, which is Blasphemer Thea. And I did get the opportunity to test this on the PTR, so this is kind of like what worked for me. I was able to follow along with this and get a 90-minute campaign clear without using any sort of like movement speed tech or anything. So you can definitely, go faster by doing some more advanced stuff. This will be pretty straightforward for you. And I think Thea is just going to be a really strong character in general, simply because she can just do a lot of stuff. And so her like hero traits basically lead towards making erosion damage do a ton of damage. And so really all you need to do is like damage over time with erosion. There's new hit based stuff with erosion. You could do physical damage skills and convert them into erosion. So we're going to see like several different builds pop off for this hero. And so it's going to be pretty fun. So if you might notice here, we have a whole written guide set up for you on heroic.gg. This is a new site that we've kind of popped up, hopefully to kind of like fill the void that Max Roll left when they ended their contract. And yeah, you should be able to find this in the description down below. I'm not going to go through everything that's here because that's kind of what the written guide is for, but kind of go through some of the baseline stuff here. So our main skill we're going to be using is Haunting Abomination. You're just going to get this right at level 1. And it is pretty darn strong. Pretty much you just target an enemy, and if you hit an enemy with the blast, it will lead like this little expanding red circle that comes out and just pop, 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 and kills everything that's kind of or does a lot of damage to it. And you can just like leave it behind you as you keep running, just teleporting away, and it will kill enemies behind you. Our hero trait specifically, skipping ahead here a little bit, applies this debuff called desecration. And it applies it to like the highest rarity enemy that's near you, which massively increases the amount of erosion damage they take. And so baseline is going to be 15% additional erosion damage for each stack, and you have 3 stacks. So it's like 45% more damage, which means that like elites are going to be very weak against you as you're running by them. You just slap desecration on them and the Haunting Abomination and our curse, and they're just going to die. And this is going to let you like just not have to sit in treasure troves and level up a whole bunch, but there are quite a few treasure troves that you are going to want to stop by. In fact, if we look at our ideal gear from the campaign here, only 2 items, ownerless, which comes from the campaign boss, and your gloves are not from treasure troves. Everything else is pretty much something you can get from a treasure trove, and it is a pretty common drop for all of these. There's no like super duper rare things, and it really just kind of feels like they are reworking the treasure troves to have like a lot better gear. Kind of starting here with Thea3, where it feels like almost every single one has something like hand tailored for her. But we'll get into that in a little bit here. Our final skill setup is going to look like this: Haunting Abomination, Passivization, Ground Divide, Increased Area, and Spell Concentration. You could potentially put Grudge on here as well, but as we're running through and leveling, we actually ended up using a Shadow Shot here as kind of like an extra damage skill. The problem with Haunting Abomination is when you throw it out, it kind of pulses. But if you cast it a second time, it will delete the original pulse and then start spreading out again. And so you don't really like have any skills to like kind of spam against the boss besides just standing there and like letting your abomination, kind of hit it. So I just decided to use Shadow Shot as a secondary skill. It does like about the same damage as Haunting Abomination right out the gate, but then Haunting Abomination kind of like pulls ahead as it gets more supports. And Shadow Shot is something you could probably just like drop off by the end of the campaign if you don't really like using it, but you can use it to apply Grudge as well in that paralyzation. And so, yeah, that's pretty much just how it is. Yeah, as soon as you unlock our first hero trait, as we talked about before, enemies pretty much around you are going to start getting this desecration effect on them, which is this little, I had a picture of this, I thought, a little purple effect on them where they, just taking a little bit more damage. We also get like blessings for free. So we get every 2 seconds, we get focus, agility, or tenacity. And one weird thing about Thea is that whenever she would increase her max blessing stacks, instead it reduces it. So if you have 4 focus blessings and you get +1 max focus, it goes down to 3, then to 2, then to 1. And that's kind of a good thing because each stack that you lose increases your max desecration stack. So you can kind of see it as 15% more damage for each focus blessing that you lose, which is still a pretty good deal. And pretty much the way that her desecration skill works is it just fires off and hits the highest rarity enemy within 15 meters, and it puts 1/3 of the max stacks of desecration on them, which means you kind of need to hit them 3 times in order to get it to go. But the skill has a cooldown to it. And we can get around that though by generating more blessings. Because anytime we generate a blessing, it automatically triggers desecration. So like we have a couple of things in our build here and in our leveling legendaries that are going to help us out with that. And so we're eventually in the end game going to look to stack max blessing stacks. We get a huge benefit from some of our passive stuffs here. Like for example, the new Deceiver's Might here makes it so that we get +1 max to all 3 blessings, which as you can guess is a massive amount of damage, which is pretty nice. We're also going to be taking advantage of the new mechanic Deterioration. Pretty much what this does is kind of like a delayed hit. So if I hit an enemy, if I have a 100% deterioration chance for 100 erosion damage, it's going to place a debuff on them that will echo 60% of that hit erosion damage after a 1 second delay. There are traits in here and things in the passives and all gear and stuff that can increase the amount of damage that the deterioration does, can make it apply multiple stacks, just do a whole bunch of stuff and like increase or decrease the duration that it takes. So I think that this is going to be pretty fun just to kind of lean into. So we start off with Goddess of Deception. This pretty much just gives us the new mixture, which gives us 50% deterioration chance. And then we get the Deceiver's Might for +1 max to all blessings. Here's kind of the tree for that. For Shadow Master, it's our second tree. We're going to spend 32 points here, and we get Dirt and Twisted Belief. Both of these just give you more erosion damage. It's kind of just like a no-brainer for the build. This tree will also help us get up to just above 100% chance to apply Deterioration. Maybe in endgame, if you continue with this style build, you might end up pulling some of the points out as you get it on gear or other ways around. But yeah, this pretty much just like makes you just do more damage, which is pretty nice. Next thing I want to talk about real quick is the Sandlord mechanic and leveling. So as you're running through the campaign, you're going to see these little pads, and these are actually pretty freaking powerful in terms of providing tons of enemies. You could almost think of this as like a treasure trove in a box. And so when you walk over it, tons of enemies are just kind of rain down on you. And depending kind of on like your luck, sometimes you're going to get like a little bit of enemies. Sometimes you're going to get quite a bit of enemies. And sometimes you're going to get a lot of enemies. And sometimes even like elites and stuff pop out of here. And it's just a lot of stuff. Another thing that's pretty important is that these enemies drop 2 resources that you're going to desperately need to help level up your base in the beginning. And they are Dirty Water and Rye Grain. These are 2 resources that you have to refine in your town. And the only way to acquire them is by clearing this type of content. And so kind of getting a little bit of this early on is pretty useful. So you might want to clear some of these as you're going through the campaign, especially if you're starting to fall behind in level. This is kind of not a bad idea to step on them. I've also seen sometimes where there's 2 of these pads like nearly directly on top of each other or kind of close, and you can kind of like walk between the 2, activate them both at the same time, just have tons of enemies rushing you, just delivering like Uber Eats XP. And I guess Dirty Water, I guess, I'm probably going to 3-star, maybe 2-star that delivery. Then it's kind of like the whole step-by-step leveling here. There's a whole lot of explanations and steps in here. I'm personally not going to go through every single thing here, but realistically, what you need to know is you're going to start with Haunting Abomination as your first skill. You're going to use it through the campaign, and that's pretty much like the main skill you need to worry about. As soon as you get your first, your next skill besides your blink that you can put on the bar, Shadow Shot is a pretty good idea here. You don't necessarily need to do that. You could do other stuff for sure, but I do think the Shadow Shot did help me out early game quite a bit. It's just nice to actually have a button to spam. Next up, we're just going to kind of keep going through, and pretty much each treasure trove, except for the first one, has something that we're kind of going to be looking for here. So the second trove, we want to pick up Grace Boots and Desire of Survival. Grace Boots are pretty nice because it gives us movement speed baseline and gives us more movement speed with focus blessings at max stacks, which could be pretty quick. And then 20% chance for non-critical strikes to give you 1 stack of focus blessing. So this is really good because what this does is when your Haunting Abomination hits a whole bunch of enemies, and doesn't crit because we're not really focusing on crit, it's very likely to give you focus blessings, which then fire off your desecration on enemies and also helps you get to the maximum movement speed and is giving you more damage right off the bat. So these boots are pretty good. Like I said before, Desire of Survival gives you a big healing boost when you're low HP. That's just very nice to have. Once you finish the first, I guess, act of the campaign, you can actually, you're going to be in town. And this is kind of like the second part of the Sandlord mechanic, where you're pretty much going to be able to go to the island and start messing around with stuff. I typically wouldn't recommend going to the island unless you're already in town, because if you're out in a campaign zone and you click this little button here and go to the oasis, it's going to, once you leave the oasis, put you back in town, which could be a little bit confusing trying to figure out where the heck you were. If you do get confused, just walk over to the big yellow portal on the far left and it will just take you to the right spot on the map. But yeah, I definitely lost a little bit of time on one of my runs doing this. I kind of got a little bit confused what was going on. There's actually basically like a little mini series of quests that you can do in the oasis, kind of just to start off. And each one of those are going to give you workers and stuff that you need. And one of the things you need to do is send out 2 trade missions. And I think the first trade mission is 10 seconds, but then the second one takes 40 minutes to complete. So it's kind of nice to get this going while you're going through the campaign. The loot's not really anything to write home about, but you could potentially get a belt with a nice talent or maybe blessings or damage or skill levels or something on it. So it could be okay. Then we're going to eventually come up to Treasure Trove 3. We're going to be looking for 2 of these Scepter of Excommunication. I'm not really sure what the stats on this are going to end up being. It could be plus skill level. It could end up being erosion damage penetration. Both of these are pretty good. We can, there's also this board and fire ring, which is pretty nice for survivability. But the next trove gives us these insane rings that we're looking for. And there's these new unholy prayers. Pretty much what they are is they give you +1 to a random tenacity, agility, focus blessing of maximum stacks, and then gives you a stack of that blessing whenever you inflict damage with a 1-second cooldown. And so really you're just going to look for any of these. Doesn't matter if it's tenacity, agility, focus, and this is pretty much going to just give you a huge generation of blessings this way, which helps you also to spam out desecration. With having 2 of these rings on and the boots, pretty much bosses are going to right up to the desecration cap every single time without you having to press the button to activate it. And it's just going to make your life super duper easy. And it's just way more damage. This basically says 15% additional damage to your desecration target, which is just great. Corrupted Marrow is on the 5th trove here. This pretty much gives us more max Terra charge stacks. So pretty much you have a little charge that builds up for your Haunting Abomination. And as long as you cast it at max, you're doing a lot more damage. But this also gives us 20% more movement speed for 2 seconds. So we just zoom even faster. Then we're going to get our first hero memory. It's going to unlock Unholy Baptism for us. And this is just really stinking strong because this makes it so that on the desecration target will have a little purple circle around them. And any enemies in the circle will explode or have a chance to explode when they die. And that can kind of just blow up leads for you. I remember there's a boss fight where you get a ton of ads and the desecration was on the boss and he just instantly died due to everything exploding on him. Pretty cool. Lastly, the final treasure trove here drops this thing called Gauze of the Phantom Sin, which gives us +1 to all blessings. But then we lose damage based on the number of blessings we own. But if you recall, getting max blessings actually reduces how many blessings we have. So we kind of get around a lot of the negative downside of this item. And I just think this is pretty good. This also drops a amulet called Prayer Bead of Evil, which I think is worse than Ownerless in every single possible way. So I wouldn't replace that. But pretty much with all of this stuff, you're going to be super duper easy just to blast into maps and start going through the Nether Realm, getting it up towards T7. And I don't really think you're going to need to replace your gear too much. And if you do, you probably just want to get more survivability. But that's kind of for maybe a different build. But yeah, that's pretty much what my plans are for the start of the the season here. I will be doing a video guide update probably after I kill Time Mark 7 Traveler, maybe even go into Time Mark 8, kind of give you an idea of what the build is. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with Haunting Abomination all the way into endgame or pivot into Mind Control, but yeah, this is pretty much the plan for right now. Thank you much guys for watching the video, and we'll see you again soon. Come by the stream.